Morning. How's everybody doing? Great. All right. Welcome to 1 Million Cups. This is weird for me to jump back into it. I've been gone for 3 weeks, so here I am. I don't really know what I'm going to say. I've kind of got used to it, and now I'm back alone. Where's Stephanie? Oh, yeah, that's right. All right. So welcome to 1 Million Cups. My name's Zach, and this is our wonderful team of Courtney, Luke, and Kyle. Stephanie's out, but she'll be back soon, I do believe. So whose first time is it here today? Show of hands. Nice. Welcome. Welcome to all of you. For those of you that are new and for those of you that maybe haven't been here in a while, 1 Million Cups is an entrepreneurial experience put on by the Kauffman Foundation. You'll get to hear 2 entrepreneurs' stories. They'll come up, tell you their trials, their tribulations, and then our expert panel will have a chance to poke some holes, and then you'll all have a chance to ask some questions. So first things first, we need to introduce our expert panel, starting with Mr. Frank Keck here.
Good morning. My name is Frank Keck. I'm the People Whisperer. I own a company called Accelerant, and I help people get more from their people.
People.
Hi, Xander Winkle with the Innovation Center in Independence. We have been known for our culinary program. We also have a tech program that just partnered with Digital Sandbox, and a shout out to our co-working team at WorksLab, live streaming right now.
All right. Thank you both, gentlemen, for being here. And we're going to go ahead and kick it off with Jason from Data Game. You can clap now if you want. Yep.
We're good? All right. So I'll just thank you for giving me the stage for 24 minutes. I'll just start off by saying I did grow up here, but I also lived on the West Coast for about 20 years. So this is about as business formal as I get. You'll just have to live with that. There it is. So Data Game is all about engagement, insightful engagement. And so what I'm talking about there is getting people to actually interact with your brand or your survey. I'm guessing that most of you probably receive a fair number of online surveys, maybe more than 1 a week. In my case, maybe more like 20 a week, and you probably ignore most of them. You probably also see a lot of content, blog content, Twitter content, Facebook content, and you kind of glaze past most of it, and maybe a little bit of it you'll actually interact with. So it's actually a really big problem for both marketers and research professionals. In the survey world, it's gotten to where maybe 2% of the people that you invite on average to take your survey will actually complete that survey. And that has eroded the quality of the sample pool you're talking to so much that it's beginning to jeopardize the legitimacy of the actual underlying statistical algorithms that are used to generate insights. Similarly, on the content side, at the moment, maybe 1 in 5 pieces of content that you see online, you'll actually interact with in some way. This is following the same downward spiral that we saw with banner ads, that we saw with online surveys, where that engagement rate continues to decline. Just in the US, in B2B content marketing, we're spending over $5 billion a year just in creating the content. So we're wasting a little over $1 billion of that. And the solution so far has just been the usual brute force, let's put out more. So if we put out more content, more surveys, send out more emails, we'll be able to overcome some of these structural deficiencies in the whole process. So what Data Game does is we're using gamification techniques to design embedded games inside of surveys and other online content that are using analytics and data science to actually generate insights about the audience that you're engaging with at the same time that you are getting them to interact with your brand. I'll show you a couple examples here in a moment. There's 2 primary applications for the technology. One is Data Game for Surveys, which again is very focused on how do you get the online survey world to improve that response rate. The second application is in content marketing, where we're using the same technology platform to boost landing page results, to boost Facebook content results, to boost any other type of online digital content, even embedded inside of blogs. So in the survey world, you probably don't do a lot of survey design yourself unless you work at a research agency like I did in the past. You'll usually see about half of your attrition happening in the core structure of your survey. The stuff that you're actually trying to learn about, that's where you'll lose most of the people. And the reason for that is that those surveys are very dense, they're very time consuming, they're very easy to walk away from. Just by dropping in Data Game, we can usually boost the response rate in that section by about 20%. In research budgets, every percent you can improve your response rate saves you about 1% in your spend on acquiring people to take the survey. So it's actually a really big cost savings by doing this one little trick. On the content side, we've seen it embedded in blogs, We've seen it embedded in other situations as well. And again, the idea here is that you as a as a marketer, you can go in, configure these games, embed them inside of your sites, publish them to your content, boost engagement across the board. We have 4 games in the portfolio right now. These are all designed originally with research purposes in mind, so they have some really useful insights that you extract about your audience as they participate in the games. I won't go into details right now about what each of them do. The intent here is just to show that it is a growing portfolio. At completion of that project, we expect to have maybe 15 to 20 total games in the slate that will cover about 80% of the types of work you might do in online research. Just to give a little bit of example of some typical applications, we've seen these used for logo testing. We've seen them used for best worst case exercises, for prioritizing features and new product development, for concept testing, sentiment feedback, brand audits, a really broad range of applications where we've seen these used so far. I have a minute and a half, so I'm not going to let you finish the videos here, but we can go back to them later. As a platform, it's all DIY configurable, so the intention here is to let you publish wherever you want to use the technology. It works out of the box right now with major survey platforms such as Qualtrics and Confirmit. There's a WordPress plugin if you want to just push content out into WordPress, generic JavaScript and HTML5, post a URL. So lots of different ways to get the content out there and to collect insights back from your audience. And it's a really straightforward business model, subscription service, different price tiers depending on whether you're a content marketer, a survey professional, or a larger enterprise. It's a pretty big market. Just in the content marketing and insights world, we're looking at about a $46 billion space that's spent annually on that process. About $5 billion just in the US on content development and content marketing, $9 billion globally on surveys, DIY research. And we've been getting some pretty good progress. So we launched a beta back in July of last year. We've had 250 users so far work through the system. They've fielded over 100 campaigns. We've had 50,000 people playing on the platform, over 5,000 hours of engagement, so a lot of time being spent with people inside the platform, and a little over 2 million data points that we use for analyzing the behaviors of the overall audiences. So that's good, 5 seconds. I have more stuff, but I'm happy to take questions now. That's the basic story.
Frank, Xander, you want to go first?
Fantastic presentation. You obviously know your stuff. The only hole I can see in the presentation is how do you make money?
How do you make money? Let's go back. Let's go backwards. There we go. You're making money here. So you're selling annual licenses to the service. Our average monthly revenue per user right now is around $500. We're seeing more interest, I would say, on the higher end of the scale, the agency and enterprise plans, where they're wanting to take the technology and deploy it across their entire client base. Not so much necessarily the SMB individual marketer that is doing this just for their own little product. But yeah, this is where the money's made.
I do think it's a really cool product. Being somebody that deals with human engagement, I love the fact that you guys are very visual. That's predominantly how people learn. I went to your website last night, and I'm curious, who's your target audience going to the website? As a low-tech guy, I really wanted to play, but I didn't understand how. So I'm just curious, how do you, is there instructions somewhere?
Right.
Is your face going to pop up in a video and walk me through it?
Right. So there's a little bit of a disconnect right now between the current public website and this particular plan. It's more focused on the survey slice of the market. That's more about kind of how we got to where we're at, where we started originally back in 2012 as a research agency. I had worked at video game companies in the past as a researcher, and I had spun out doing custom research for these companies. And as we were doing that, we were coming across engagement problems in that particular space. And so we started building out, kind of version 1 of this technology about 2.5 years ago. And it's been slowly evolving since there. But you can still see some of those researchy origins in the current marketing. Definitely part of what we're working on right now is building out the kind of the consumer-facing side of the content. The expectation there is to have more of a separate portal where just games for fun are being fielded out there for awareness and to collect more data that we can perhaps monetize in the future.
Going back to your target market and then the funding, you made an interesting point that the majority of your customers are you're developing that custom interface for them. So as you grow, do you see that being your target and growth, while the small business user, the $75 package, is more just auxiliary income while you already have this infrastructure built? Or how does that growth strategy look?
Yeah, so I think we're going to max out on the agency side much sooner than we would max out on the small and medium plans. So our focus for development over the next couple of years is definitely more on that entry to middle space. Not a lot of companies are going to drop $25K a year to do this, but if you look at services like Moz or some of the other SEO types of platforms, they're more than capable of generating $100, $200, $500 a month from professional content marketers.
I could see this really big with HR people in organizations. Do you have a plan on how you're going to get the word out? You have a really cool product, so how do you let people know?
So most of our success in marketing at the moment comes from event marketing. We've found that if you get people in front of the product for 10 minutes and give them a chance to actually interact with it, it's a really easy deal to close after that. So events have been very productive for us. Online, we're still kind of tuning the tactics there. We've been experimenting with some digital ad placement. We're getting pretty good trial uptake from that. We haven't been doing that long enough yet to really have a good feel for what the conversion numbers look like.
I'm curious because surveys have been used and tried and true, but for the platform that you've built, I'm curious from an academic perspective, the value of the data that you've drawn from this particular method. Are there studies? Are there universities that have looked at this?
Yep, excellent question. So one thing you'll find in trying to sell to the research community, they're very conservative, they're very slow to change, and they want to see a lot of evidence and proof that what you're doing has some statistical validation. So let's see if we can get the game to play here. Come here. All right. So in this game, this MaxDiff game here, that's actually based off of a methodology that's been pretty well established in research worlds for a good decade and a half now. So what it's doing is mimicking some of the same choice sets that you might see in an online survey, but doing it in a more visual and interactive way. So we've actually done a kind of a research on research project where we fielded that to about 50,000 people across 20 countries, A/B test, comparing those results with the results from our game, and we saw like a 0.986 correlation in outcomes. So as far as the research goal is concerned, yes, it's absolutely valid. We also saw about a 15% bump in response rate. So the translated value of that for that particular study would have been about a $20,000 savings in recruiting costs.
I tried, you nailed them.
All right, we're going to go ahead and open it up to the crowd coming up to start up front here. Go ahead and just raise your hands and I'll come around to you.
Jason, thanks for coming out.
Of course.
My name's Steve Stryker. I'm an attorney here in town, but 5 years at Arbitron, which is now part of Nielsen.
Yes.
Okay, my question he kind of answered was non-response bias is the big killer right now in any kind of measurement or surveying, and you mentioned a 15% increase, which if anybody doesn't know that that's in the business, that's like a killer major improvement. If you can get a 2% improvement because non-response bias is the key driver of quality of the data that's coming out, and that's what's killing. That's why we can't figure out who's going to win, whatever state in the presidential race, because surveying doesn't work right now very well. What about interaction with other APIs like SurveyMonkey? Can you drop this in to the, people aren't going to change to a new platform. They're going to want your API to work with other APIs.
Yes, so it depends on the platform and what their particular capabilities are. With Qualtrics, which is probably the big player in the survey world right now, they're like on this huge growth path. We directly publish into Qualtrics, so you're not going to leave your survey platform and then come over to DataGame and go back to your survey platform. It stays within that same user flow. It is feasible for us to actually save the data directly into that same data set. Some of that is a little trickier depending on the client. And so that gets us more into kind of a professional services zone than an out of the box, but we're working on it. It's definitely something that we would like to see.
Question over here.
Great presentation. And one of the things that I wanted to hear about is, like, as you know, one of the hottest mobile games right now is Pokemon Go. What are some of the lessons that have you learned from your viewers that use it, like Pokemon Go, and how you might incorporate to newer models of data game?
So it's funny. So we actually, if you go to the site, if you go to the blog, we have a post about Pokemon Go. That's probably our most trafficked blog post. It's a rather popular topic. I lean more on my game industry background there than on data game in particular, because there's like a small number of those really amazing games that just catch fire, and there's a huge sea of much less engaging stuff. So there is a combination of art and science involved there in trying to create content that's really going to engage. I think the benefit that we have is we're not trying to keep your attention for 6 months, right? We just need to grab your attention long enough to go through a 30 to 60-second exercise and then collect some data from that and drive you into some sort of an engagement funnel to like a page or share a post or whatever that is. So the design bar is a lot easier to achieve in our case. But yes, we definitely still try to follow the trends as far as what people are interested in.
Question on your left, Jason.
Yeah, thank you. Tom McCoy, could you give us a little insight into the reporting mechanisms that are associated with this?
Yes, I didn't put any screenshots in, but there are 2 methods available. There are some web-based dashboards where you can go in for live viewing of the results of your particular game. And there is a data export function. So you can take all of the raw individual player level data and export that directly to Excel for analysis and whatever other tools you may be using. We're working on some other reporting formats as well that are more driven around kind of the content engagement funnel. So that's on the radar as well.
Nothing, Luke? Good? All right, Chris Cardinal.
All you.
Two quick questions. First off, after explaining the first one, can you talk about your team a little bit? But my real question is there any psychological profiles that you can create from this information rather than just kind of a straightforward survey because of the advanced mechanisms of the game, and how have you explored that? And then what's your team look like?
Sure. So the second question first. Yes, you can absolutely do segmentation work off of this data. That's more a factor of designing the content of the game to kind of prod on the particular behavioral attributes or psychographic attributes you may be interested in. But yes, absolutely is feasible. We've done that before. As far as what the team looks like, I thought that might come up. Thought compares might come up. So this is the team. Here's me. Again, my background, computer science undergrad, MBA at Berkeley, worked at Xbox, Blizzard, and I've been doing this kind of stuff for 20 years. I wrote my first game when I was 8 on a Timex Sinclair 1000. This little tiny thing that was like 25 bucks at Walmart. Right. Jerry is our director of research. He's been in the research space for his entire career as a master's in marketing research. He helps us make sure the algorithms are legit and that they're going to be generating insights that are of actual valid use. And then Pete is our customer success guy. He's the one that makes sure that the folks that are using the system are getting full utility out of that. I'm the primary developer of the platform at this stage.
Back here to your right, your left.
Came out of left field on me there.
I should mention, we do have an advisory board set up as well. These are all execs in the research and game industry that I have accumulated in my Rolodex over the past couple of decades. Brain Juicer, Miller Brown, Gen 2 guys. Jeffrey Henning actually developed the very first online survey software platform back in 1996. So lots of interesting stories there. And then Michael Gluck at VG Market, he probably does half of the video game research, is like all the play testing work that's done.
Okay. Hi, I'm Phil. This follows up on a bias that comes out. Have you looked at the degree to which a game will bias a person's response?
So we've had some people express concerns about either gender or age bias in the recruiting or the self-selection criteria of the process. If we were making games like Doom, then yes, there would definitely be an issue there. The games we're making are all using really traditional, old-fashioned mechanics like dice and cards and board games. And so these are things where if you look at broad survey data, about 80% of the US population plays some of that type of content every once in a while. It may not be online, it may be offline, but we have yet seen any significant differences in willingness to participate in the process.
Question up front here.
You definitely have a well-rounded product. You've been at it in your industry for a long time. What do you hope to come out of here with? What are your challenges? What can we help you with? Because I think we're just kind of dancing around questions you already know.
I have the answers for your question. There are many things that you can all help me with. First one, number one thing, if it sounds interesting to you, give us some feedback on the process, either as a player or as a creator of these games. You can go to the site, you can create a free account, you can play around with it. You don't have to publish it anywhere. You can just see how it works and let us know what you think and where it's working or giving you some friction. We're looking for technology partners. So yes, we have half a dozen ways you can publish it right now, but if you have a platform, that would be a good fit to let us streamline publishing of these games into your channel. We're more than happy to do a little bit of lifting on our side to make that an out-of-the-box feature. We're always looking for new game ideas. So if there's a particular type of content that you think, hey, that would be a really interesting game. For example, a pricing game or a conjoint game if you're in the research world. Every game that we've made has started with a real world problem that a researcher or marketer has had. And so we're always fishing for ideas around that. Spreading the word. If you like what you're doing when you're testing it out, put it out on your Facebook or Twitter posts. Just let it get out there and breathe a little bit so we can start to see how the bigger world interacts with it. Agencies, if this is something you think you might be able to upsell to your clients, and I've found so far it's a super easy upsell. Qualtrics, we're on their partner program. It's just like a quick $2,500 boom, boom, boom every time they do a new client that wants anything to do with gamification. And then lastly, yeah, if you have money, yeah, we're raising some money, and we're happy to have that conversation with you. That's not the main reason I'm here right now, but these are the main ways I could think of that you could help.
Question here in the middle.
Since engagement is your goal, do you have the ability to change the game based on the demographics of the person taking the survey?
That is an interesting question. Well, the challenge is knowing at the beginning of that process what are their demographics. We have been looking into some ways to actually chain games together and then kind of path differently depending on what the outcome was of previous games. I guess it's more towards like a full survey platform solution, so we're not entirely sure if we're going to go that direction quite yet. But I think if it was something that was really important to a client, that we would be able to find a way to do it.
Question here in the middle.
So I'm curious about the competitive landscape. I mean, is anybody else out there doing anything similar? And then also, like, to what extent are you able to protect this IP or keep it from being knocked off?
So on the content marketing side, it is a little bit crowded out there. Generally what you find in this space is you either have companies that are focused on just pure engagement or social viral marketing, like a PlayBuzz or a WooBox or something like that. Or you have folks that are focused just on the insight, so the survey platforms like the SurveyMonkey, SurveyGizmo, and Qualtrics. So we're trying to push in this direction, so engagement plus insights is the kind of secret sauce that we're working towards. There's a couple of other folks that are moving towards that direction. No one quite as pure play as us yet, but we're certainly watching it. We'd see our main advantages are mostly going to be around distribution channels. So the fact that we can partner with a Qualtrics and use their sales force as one of our sales channels is a huge advantage, whereas most of these other companies are trying to get you to all get locked into their platform. We don't want to be your exclusive tech platform for insights and content marketing. We want to feed into whatever else you're doing. And then separately, that the games that we're actually making are designed with research principles in mind. And so the data that we're going to gather is going to be higher value data than you would get from a simple little poll. There's another question, another part of that question. IP, right. So we have a patent filing about a year and a half ago. So it's in the pipeline for parts of this methodology and process. Obviously way too early to know how that's going to go.
All right, we have 5 more minutes to find out if anyone has a question that Jason doesn't have a slide for.
My question is, what's in it for the survey taker? Is there rewards if they get to a certain level? Have you built that in?
We have not built that in. I don't have a slide for that.
There you go.
The incentive they get is driven by whoever is organizing the survey, right? And so in some cases, they're just using it as a way to kind of cut back on the incentive. So no, I think the incentive is partly, this is more interesting to do than what I usually see, and I'm more willing to spend time doing this because it's just kind of fun and lightweight. I think that's the main incentive that we're driving right now. We are looking at ways to be able to capture the profile of those users as they participate in data games kind of scattered across the internet, and then be able to use that as a way to build up their profiles. But we're really more of a B2B focus at the moment. B2C would bring us more like in this direction. Like PlayBuzz and some of these other guys, their main way of driving content is they have a consumer portal that has just a sea of games that people are creating, and they monetize off of advertising. We're not doing the ad monetization.
Question here in the back.
Yep.
Hey, Jason, you're a UC Berkeley guy?
I am.
Yeah. What are you doing here in Kansas City?
I grew up here.
You stayed, you came back, or?
I did. I went to William Chrisman out in Independence, and then went to WPI in Massachusetts for my engineering undergrad, and spent about 10 years in the Bay Area doing software development, a couple years at Xbox, a few years down Southern Cal. But honestly, the true answer to that is I then had my son, and my family is all here. And that was a dynamic that was just not going to work, and so I moved back here and then tried to figure out what am I going to do next.
We have a question from Twitter.
Okay.
At Aerial Media KC asks, will Data Game make a product for smaller agencies in the future?
I would say that the agencies using the platform right now span a pretty broad range. So we have one where they've got 30 users and they're multinational. We've got others that are just a team of 3. So I think that it works well now, regardless of what the size of the agency is, and we just adjust pricing appropriately based on kind of capacity to pay.
Got time for about one more from the audience. Joe.
You focused on the game aspect to get people to actually respond, but there's this whole question of data validation, meaning are you actually getting a sample that's representative of whatever population you're trying to poll? And it's hard to, I can't envision how you use it in the game. So can you tell us how you do that?
How we can validate?
That's right.
So that's, thankfully for us, a problem that's out of our control. We can't control where our clients are pushing their games, right? So if they publish something to a Facebook page, they're going to get a different, kind of more enthusiastic response to what they did than if they purchase a list from somewhere and drive people through a survey. So that's still a problem that you need to ideally have a professional researcher involved to make sure that you're designing an effective sample to get to what you're looking for. What we're trying to solve is that once you get people into that survey and you lose half of them inside the survey because the survey is so friggin' bad, let's not lose all those folks, right? You've already spent a lot of money to get them. Let's keep them there and get their feedback.
So I know you've already kind of answered this, but what can we as a community do to help you?
All of those 6 things would be awesome.
All of them.
All of them, especially number 6.
It, right?
6 would be great. Like if someone
I think
here
this
wanted
is a challenge
to
today.
participate.
6 things.
Yeah. Pick one, anyone. I don't care which one. That'd be well worth it.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation today, Jason. Okay, so announcements this week. I'm going to bring you up. Okay. First of all, it's KC Co-working Week. How many have visited one of the co-working spaces already this week? Seriously, one who's already in a co-working space? Come on, people. 2, sorry. Okay, so if you haven't, please check out the co-working spaces either Thursday or Friday. Maybe you can take a day off and go visit one on Friday. Great way to support our community this week. Also, there's a Business and Life Mastery Workshop this Friday. It's kind of a Tony Robbins event that I got sent last week. And then also this Friday is Second Fridays at the Village Square. They play games, drink some beer, have some fun. Great way to meet your community, maybe in a different setting than a networking event. And then also, we have an announcement from Gilded. I'm going to bring her up for a live announcement. Come on, it's your 1-year birthday.
Hi, yes. Gilded is the inspired 1 Million Cups version for artists, and we have mid-career and experienced artists come and present. We've been doing this for a year. We got a great grant from the Ewan Kauffman Foundation that we're very happy about, and it'll help us populate more of what we're trying to do and build the economy of the arts here. And we have a birthday celebration coming up at the Artstown Arts Bar, and these cards talk about that as well as the rest of our season this year. And at a panel of Hugh Merrill, a professor at the Art Institute, will be talking, as well as jazz singer Molly Hammer, and then also poet Jen Harris, who just had a fabulous Kickstarter campaign. So do come check us out, and throughout the rest of the year, we'll be around.
Thank you. And now for our second presenter, I would like to welcome Bug Eater Foods.
Hi, so my name is Kelly Sturrock, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Bug Eater Foods, and we do exactly as it sounds. We do insect-based food products for human consumption. And how this company actually started was 25-cent taco night at a bar we always went to on Tuesdays. And it kind of just went from conversation with me and my friend Alec, who's our marketing and design guy, saying, what's in these tacos that makes it so cheap? Well, you know what it should be? It should be insects, because they're environmentally friendly, they're full of protein, and they're actually really healthy for you, and they're cheap. And he was the first person to tell me that no way in hell this is actually going to happen. And then 2 months later, when I started actually looking into it, doing research, finding people involved in this industry, he was the first person to come on board and said, okay, you're actually serious, let's do this. So we had a business guy, and we had an adult who was banned from using the oven running a food company. So we reached out to the Food Science Club at University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And University of Nebraska-Lincoln actually has a really great pilot plant where they actually make big companies' food products. ConAgra was actually a pretty big sponsor of the Nebraska Innovation Campus. And so we actually met Julianne, our other third co-founder. Julianne, when we met her, had actually been working with insect-based food products for the past 4 years at the Nebraska pilot plant as an intern and wanted to start her own company. So we had the idea, we had the execution, and we had the guy to make it look pretty. And over the past 2 years, we built up a great team of advisors who are in 20 years product development of food products, distribution, protein specialists in food science, marketing, and packaging and design. And so when we started this company, when we first got together, we thought, this is what we want to do. We want to feed people. That's the big thing, right? This is a cheap resource and a cheap food source that can become one of mankind's biggest problem solvers. So it's a really big problem. And so what we decided is we need to do a little bit smaller. So here in America, protein consumption has increased pretty dramatically. But we've been eating a lot less traditional protein sources such as cattle over the past few years, mainly for 3 different reasons: environmental, pricing, and health concerns. So people want their protein in more unique ways. And you see this with protein in coffee, protein in pancakes, protein in chips, and almost anything. So we decided to make a very unique source of protein. And so we made the first ever cricket-based protein shake last year and sold it. Our first flavor that we had was chocolate, and we sold it online. And we also got a pilot with one of our local Hy-Vee stores in Lincoln, Nebraska. We sold 90 units in under a month. And so now we're actually going to go into all 230 Hy-Vee stores by using their distributor. Not only that, we have a pilot with Lucky Vitamin, which is the e-commerce arm of GNC. We have Europa, which has about 15,000 stores, and in talks with some other local grocery stores to do pilots and affiliate programs. Now, it might just seem like we're just making kind of protein powders and really easy things. And that was kind of the idea in the beginning, is what's the quickest thing we can make and put out there and see if people will actually be willing to eat insects. But that's not all we're just making. We like to do some harder challenges. So we're actually making insect rice. Looks, cooks, and tastes exactly like rice, but has more protein, more iron, and more omega-3 fatty acids. And I'm happy to say we actually have some help for this project. We were actually just awarded the USDA Phase 1 project for $100,000 to look into this project. Also, we have multiple state grants that we'll be using for reimbursements to help get up to 165K. And we think this rice can actually do a lot more. So we're actually applying for a National Institute of Health grant to see if crickets and insects can be used for patients that have chronic injuries and head trauma who need dense nutrition, as well as military, where soldiers will be using rations and insects as military rations. And not only can we make just rice, we could actually make pasta. So the consumer brands are actually kind of a little bit endless, and we could actually sell insect-based rices and pastas as an ingredient to other companies. Imagine cricket mac and cheese, if you will. That'd be one of the things we'd actually look into. And so I know that was a bit of a quick presentation, but I'm actually happy to announce we got one of our first purchase orders, we got grants, and a ton of stuff in the works actually making insect-based food products. So I just kind of want to know what you guys think, where we're going so far. Thank you.
Fantastic. I was really excited about this presentation. You seem to have a lot of the bases covered. Really, it looks like your biggest challenge, and you could kind of feel it from the audience, is that consumer education piece. In other markets, insects are just there's something that you eat. But stateside, there's this barrier. What does your marketing platform, aside from going just yourself place to place to say, hey, this is important and good, what does your companies, how are you engaging with folks when you get into those locations? How are you getting them to at least try what you've got?
Yeah, I would say we have like 3 different people we talk to when we talk about insect-based foods. Hell yeah, hell no, and tell me more. And a lot of the tell me more is like, how are they raised? Where are they from? They're actually from really big commercial farms that actually use these for human consumption. So they're actually FDA regulated as livestock. And once you kind of get over that barrier, they're a little bit more admittable, like, okay, this is actually for human consumption. This is a little bit interesting. And pretty much what we actually look towards is climatarians as kind of our main market. Basically people who eat based on the environmental impact of that. So someone who is a climatarian probably wouldn't eat as much cattle, but like more tilapia, more of these insects, and more plant-based proteins. And you pretty much just got to get out there and be like, it's bugs. And it's not necessarily the first time you're going to hear it that you're going to try it. It's that 5th, 6th, 7th time that you see it, and you just think, okay, now I have to try it. What's all this all about?
I think it's really cool what you guys are doing. You could feed the world, which ties in with your map, right? So one of the questions I had was, so this takes off. Do you have like a cricket farm?
No, so there's actually
like go collect bugs. So, but what's your capacity and how can you grow that?
Yeah, I guess our capacity would be right now. We could probably get about 10,000 pounds of powdered insect in 45 days. The life cycle of a cricket is about 45 days from egg to ready to harvest, which is another good benefit of using insects. But the thing is that industry is growing way faster. Last year, it probably would have been 5,000 pounds. And the year before that, it probably would have been only 1,000. And the prices are dropping pretty dramatically as well. Just in January, one of the bigger farms, it was about $22 a pound for insect powder. In 6 months, it was 18. And it might be 16 right now. We just got that quote before we got the USDA stuff, so.
I'm curious, because this is when you're on the cutting edge of food things, and you saw this with like 5 years ago, gluten-free. You had companies, and they had this option as far as their brand between, do we happen to be a high-protein thing that happens to use bug stuff that we might mention to somebody, or we go full force and this is bug protein. Did you have a conversation about that, or was that an option?
Yeah, there was a lot of like when we first started out, we went through an accelerator program, and people were like, "Why don't you like hide it? Like, you know, you can just kind of like put it over there." But we're like, "Nah, it's got bugs in it." Like like we're just like we're very upfront. Like it's called Jump. It says cricket protein on it, and our name is Bug Eater Foods. Like, we're not going to shy away from the fact that we use insects, and we should be using insects because it makes sense. And that's really our huge education piece is that, yeah, it makes sense. So try it.
So I'm just curious, have you talked to, what's his name, Bear Grylls or any of those guys did?
No. We actually sponsored a solo climb of Mount Yosemite, El Capitan. and she only ate insects for the 2-week climb, and we were one of the big sponsors of that. So we kind of do a lot of marketing stuff like that where people raise awareness.
So one of the slides you said for endurance athletes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you consider football an endurance sport, but you are from Nebraska. Have you guys talked to the football team? Have you talked to like getting into sports teams and getting them to recommend you?
Yeah, not yet, because we want to do a lot more tests. We have, as a culture, have never used insects in food processing systems that we have now. We're finding a bunch of weird discoveries in how we actually measure the protein content and carbs, calories, and things like that. Where it's kind of like we want to make sure everything's in line, scientifically before we can kind of do that. So,
what's your price point on, say, those two products there?
Yeah, so pretty much this is a little bit more of a meal replacement shake. So you're looking at about $5 a serving, which that's about $39.99 for 8.
Okay, I think we're going to open it up to the audience, so I'm sure there's going to be questions about bugs today. Who wants to go first in the back?
Is it possibly addictive if people...
She'll be right to you with the microphone that I forgot the word of.
So I'm sure that if you have a marketing test where people take it and they don't know what it is and they get addicted to it, all the fast food chains will
I don't think
be
there's
your
really
biggest
any
client.
addictive qualities so far. We do have caffeine in our coffee flavor. That's pretty much the only thing I could imagine you get addicted to. Insects are pretty much, they have full amino acid profiles, iron. There's nothing addictive, I don't think, unless you put something in there that's addictive.
Coming across to you, Joe.
So I have, I just jotted down 3 questions. You can answer them all, or you can answer one. You take your choice depending on how the rest of the people here feel about bugs. The first one, with respect to cricket powder or whatever you call it, flour, I guess, is how is that actually made? What's the process?
So it's a proprietary process, but pretty much it uses what we already have in the food processing system. It's pretty safe. We actually use it a lot of stuff. We use the process to make a lot of powders, but I can't entirely talk about it.
With respect to that, I don't know if groups like PETA would be concerned about your slaughtering of crickets, and so how is that actually done? There's a juiciness quotient that crickets have. So how do you get to a flour?
Yeah, I guess I'll just talk about a little bit of how it kind of goes through. So obviously the crickets are raised in a big farm. They have a bunch of food, a bunch of water that they all need, blah, blah, blah. And then they're actually flash frozen, which is actually the most humane way to kill an animal. And then pretty much they're ground up and then shot through a machine that we use. And then it's made into a very, very fine powder. This powder actually just looks like flour. You don't see any like exoskeleton bits and things like that because we actually kind of take it out. You can eat the exoskeleton. It's actually a really good fiber. But if you're making like a protein shake, it's not entirely great for you to have that there. And insects are actually just kind of a free-floating system of organs and blood and stuff like that. And that's actually where all the good protein is. Insects are actually 63% protein, whereas cattle's about 27. So you're getting a much higher protein content for much less land, water, and feed consumption. And for PETA, crickets actually don't have, and other insects don't have a prefrontal cortex. So they're not conscious.
Okay, or so they say. All right, so another question I have for you is, what is the insect rice? Is it also made from crickets, and is it just milled differently?
Yeah, so the insect rice, it's pretty much put through an extruder. And what an extruder is we put rice powder and cricket protein in it and then shoot it out as rice. You can make pasta the same way, just with a different ingredient and different cuts. So pretty much it's just the speed of the blade that you're using and what cuts you use.
And then my final question, as you look ahead to a greater variety of products, how think, or can you even tell us some of the equivalents might be? In other words, you know when you do substitutions even among flours, when you make bread, for example, and you suffer from celiac disease, for example, you have to vary the recipe and sometimes even your actual kneading techniques and cooking techniques. Do you know anything about those kinds of issues?
Yeah, that's definitely what we're looking to for the USDA grant is, since it is a protein rice, is it cooked differently, is it different temperatures that we'll need, and those are things all covered in the grant and all we can do in the food lab. In terms of substituting from a consumer standpoint, the closest I would put crickets on is emulsion, pretty much substituting it for like eggs. Not so much the flour because it doesn't raise. That's why actually we call it cricket powder instead of cricket flour, just because the nomenclature is totally wrong. I don't know why somebody thought cricket flour was a good idea, but it would actually be more of an emulsifier, so like eggs.
Question over. Oh, no, we're going to, my bad. Go ahead.
Back center.
After you.
I was just having a conversation with someone yesterday about how the food industry is so boring and there's really nothing new. And here you go, prove me wrong, right? So I'm less interested in the food aspect of this and more interested in the innovation aspect and how you engage the marketplace. And we've had some of these questions already asked, but as I was listening to your presentation, I was thinking of this, for whatever reason, as a healthcare product. That's just where my mind went, because whenever something new kind of comes at me, it's usually something that's supposedly healthier for me. Yeah. But I'm not sure you actually ever said that. I think I just assumed that into here. Yeah. But what I did hear you say is that your target market right now is climatarians. Mm-hmm. So this is an alternative to existing sources of protein. It's not necessarily claiming to be a healthier product. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, protein, you either need to add fat or you need to add sugar to it to make it taste good, I think.
Yeah.
So how are you learning, if this goes in the healthcare section at the store, how are you exploring to take such an innovative product into a marketplace that is so static?
Yeah, so this is actually an all-natural protein powder. This is actually one of the few you can actually find, and it has about 6 ingredients. And it has about 5 grams of sugar in a serving, but the sugar is actually powdered honey. It's one of the newer ingredients that are out and are kind of a new flavor. So instead of actually just using a normal sugar, it's powdered honey. So we kind of keep it interesting, but also keep it all natural, all the same. And with insects, it's actually kind of more so, it is healthier just because there's not as much fat in an insect as there is cattle or whey protein or anything like that. And there's actually a lot more iron. Naturally occurring iron. So this has about 45% of your daily value of iron. That's all from the insect. There's no added iron in there. And then it also has omega-3 fatty acids. An interesting fact, insects are actually very closely related to crustaceans. And in fact, they actually might share the same allergy, which isn't proven yet, which we kind of have to find out. Luckily, Nebraska has the biggest food allergy lab in the world. So they're working on that right now. But yes, they are healthier, but we need more science behind it to actually prove it.
Question over here to your left.
Yes, you were referred to this a little bit earlier, but what is the amount of energy that's required in order to provide this product as opposed to product using regular meat or also protein from vegetables?
So this is a cattle one. This is just the biggest number that we found. 98% less water, 96% less feed, 93% less land. Once it goes to about dairy, it hits about, I have the exact numbers on my laptop, but it's 40% less water, 40% or 38% less feed, and about the same amount less land. And then chickens is about 20% and so on and so forth. So it is definitely one of the more environmentally friendly. In terms of plants are a bit hard to gauge and get actual numbers on it. But in terms of other livestock and other very rich protein sources, insects are the best. And they actually have a digestibility of the same as whey and animal meat. So you're digesting as much of the protein as you would whey or animal meat. Plant proteins are actually way down on the list.
So Michael Phelps's Circle Bruises has everyone talking about cupping right now. And I'm curious if anything has happened to bring eating bugs into the mainstream that you've been able to ride the coattails of.
Yeah, there's been some celebrity stuff that, they say they eat bugs or crickets or anything like that. One of the biggest ones we actually really love to do is, this guy's name is, he's the bug chef. And he actually goes everywhere, and he went to Hollywood, and he actually served a bug dinner. And like one of his main courses he loves to do is tempura fried tarantula, and then like a little bit of chili powder on it. And it's basically for a lot of educational purposes. But he basically wrote the book, Eat a Bug Cookbook, in like 1990. So he was kind of one of the first people to actually think about this and come at it from perspective. So there's a lot of definitely news now about people doing it. So.
Question up front in the middle.
I have two questions. You mentioned earlier that they eat bugs everywhere in the world but the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you just say the heck with us stubborn people here, sell your product in China, Brazil, and Africa?
Yeah, it's definitely the main kind of goal is to do export. But also to make aid products. With the rice, 50% or more than half of the world's population subsists on rice. And we can actually make it better with insects. So there's definitely a market for aid relief products, military rations, and health products, and of course, international markets as well. But I mean, I think the big thing is we're one of the biggest consumers on the planet. So if we can eat it here.
Of rice? We're the biggest consumer of rice in the world?
Just like food in general.
Okay.
But if we can start eating insects here, we're setting.
But you're beating your head against a wall when everybody else is begging for your food.
Yeah. Well, I mean, exports, it's pretty easy. I mean, we've gotten offers from people in Australia to do Southeast Asia and things like that.
All right.
It's definitely easy, but the thing is, we want to do it here.
Okay.
Yeah, we could probably move to Asia and, make all this food and all that, but
okay.
We want to do it here.
Then you mentioned the price went down from $22 to $16 cricket thousand or whatever.
Yeah.
That means that guy producing those crickets has lost 30% of his income. It makes it better for you producing it, but eventually he's going to run out of business or you're going to overcrowd the market. How far down does it go and he can still make a profit?
No, the thing is his capacity increased. He built a whole new wing, a warehouse wing for.
So how far down? I mean, have you ever looked into the cost of raising crickets to see how far down you think it can go?
Yeah, it's more so like everybody's been talking about it and everybody knows. It's mostly the labor issue. How do you actually automate the raising and rearing of insects? And there's actually a bunch of companies and a bunch of farmers coming together and figuring that stuff out with some pretty good results. And the decrease in price from our big farm in Canada is just one of those things.
Question.
And there's getting a healthy dose of competition with other farmers popping up.
Question, you're back right.
Hey, this is really interesting. I'll echo the boring food industry versus eating bugs. But I guess my question is on margin. So on your powder, did you price that in a way that you're actually making money, or was it more of an experiment?
Yeah.
And we know the food industry runs on tremendously small margins. You may have a little runway where this is a novelty here at first, but how does that work from a business perspective?
Yeah, we're making money on it, obviously, and we're pretty much hitting the price point of other plant-based proteins. And the thing is, protein powder, it's like a 90% margin industry. It's crazy how much they mark up protein. For us, it's a little bit more like, yeah, we're not going to make those margins, and neither are our retail partners. But the thing is, I tell them, this is a new thing. Your customers are going to see that you're trying new things and that you're being environmentally friendly, and these prices will go down. In the next 5 years, it'll be pretty ridiculous how far they go down, just through automation and volume and everything else. But pretty much we try and match margins at least very closely. So yes, we're making money, and also our partners and retailers are.
Go ahead, Xander. I can feel it. Go ahead.
And I'm glad you brought this up. And you obviously have a ton of potential with crickets right now, and schedule's full there. But you had mentioned other types of insects. And I know we've had chefs that have had a very difficult time. You've got a great partner right now. But if you had been looking into other types of insects, have you run into any regulatory concerns or trouble finding a source, or is that even an option right now?
Yeah, so there's definitely more so. Mealworms are actually a good research. They're good for research right now, and the same farm in Canada is actually building up their mealworm farm. Mealworms actually taste better because they're actually a little bit more fatty, so they actually taste really good. Waxworms are also really good. They taste like pistachios. And then crickets obviously are a little bit more of like a coffee kind of roasted nut, which is why we did coffee and chocolate flavors. Like everything does have a flavor. You kind of have to think about that when you're thinking about insects. But yeah, like mealworms and waxworms are probably one of the better options. They're easy to raise, just like crickets. Termites are actually really, really good for you. And they were actually one of the first insects that humans ate. But the thing is, you can't really raise them in a closed environment like crickets because they like to do mounds and eat stuff and do all that. But those are kind of the three that we've been looking at. Grasshoppers are really hard to grind up. So we don't have the machines for those yet, but give it in the future.
I like the meal pairing with the insects, because
Yeah,
my
really.
other question is I make it a goal to make my girlfriend at least once try something new. I had my work cut out for me on mushrooms and sushi.
Yeah.
How do you recommend I go about convincing her to try bugs just once?
Honestly, like coffee is the way to go with bugs. So maybe like coffee ice cream with a little topping of a roasted insect.
I'm gonna do it.
All right, Top Chef 1MC. We are right in the middle here.
Hey, so huge props for getting into this industry. I'm sad to hear that people think the food industry is boring. I've spent the last decade of my life on the innovation side, so hopefully these smaller brands will start becoming the norm, because this is the future. My question really is kind of twofold. It's about, you referenced about 45 days to 10,000 pounds or so, and you referenced an expansion into like 230 stores of Hy-Vee, Fresh Time, a few things like that. What's your go-to-market strategy, in pairing with your capacity? And then I think the follow-up is really, what can we do for you here?
Yeah, I guess kind of twofold. It's not just about our company. It's about people in the industry. Because the thing is, we're building an entirely new category in restaurants, in retail spaces, in food spaces. So you got to get out there and you got to go to your store and say, you want insects. Because that is the only way we're getting in, for the most part. But yeah, I mean, pretty much go-to-market strategy is just people got to talk about it. And people already have a really healthy dose of what they want, and they can get it from e-commerce, they can get it from other stuff, but getting in that retail store is just a little bit more like, okay, this is actually real kind of thing. So.
Question on your right.
I was just curious what the range of the proteins were, and if it provides any of the sort of essential proteins, the ones we don't produce.
Yeah, so it has a full amino acid profile. The percentages and proportions of that, I'm not entirely sure. I'm not the food scientist, but we do have all of that. But yeah, it's full amino acid profile.
Okay, and have you thought about maybe putting it in foods for people like long-distance hikers and people who...
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much kind of the powder we thought, but bars and things like that where it's more ready to eat, totally.
Question in the back. Have you tried selling it to frogs?
To frogs?
Frogs, yeah. The serious question, so Jump sounds like an athletic protein brand, and Bug Eater Foods sounds like a big food company that's going to make a lot of different foods with bugs. So do you want to be more in that like Cliff Bar, Power Bar aisle, or in all the food aisles?
We want to be the ConAgra bugs.
All right.
ConAgra left Nebraska, so somebody's got to fill the void. It's kind of nice. We get all the machines at Nebraska Innovation Campus now. So.
All right. Well, I think we already asked it, but what can we as a community do for you? You already kind of answered it.
Go into stores and demand bugs. Any and all kinds, whatever, whole, raw, frozen. No, but companies like us and even other companies are actually really expanding. Some of the competitions have included thousands of stores. We're out there. You just got to find us. And then, of course, I actually wasn't supposed to tell you guys about the USDA grant because it was supposed to come out on Monday in the official release. But the thing is that we're supposed to have it in June, so I don't really care now. And I was going to have samples here, but the thing is I relied on the government to give me a timely, here's your money, go do some research, and I failed. So I relied on them too much. Yeah. There are some big ones out there, I saw.
Yeah, you can always come back and bring us samples. We'll allow it, for sure. Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, real quick, we forgot to do mug club, but that's okay. We're going to do it real quick. If you've been here more than 10 times, please stand up. If you already have a mug, please sit down. All right, Courtney, pick them over there. So real quick, introduce yourself and tell us why you come to A Million Cups.
Tony Wallace with SoPro Gaming, and I've been here for the last 2 years, just trying to learn something and loving the atmosphere. Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, guys, next week is Nest Express and a secret surprise presenter we're not telling this week, but we'll tell you next week. All right, see you next week. Have a great Wednesday.